When John Lasseter took over Walt Disney Animation, the studio began to look at its legacy and what had made Disney so popular in the past. Disney's ongoing push to redefine animation, its hopeful stories, and timeless musical approach is what made Disney so popular during the 20th century, and would be the key to reinvigorating the brand under Lasseter's lead. Tangled was a home run, and its follow-up Wreck-It Ralph surprised moviegoers with a sense of nostalgia and fun. Disney had ramped up momentum, and was gearing up for its biggest success since its renaissance in the 1990s, as the revival era would prove to be the most profitable and progressive era of Disney animation. Going back to the time of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, another film idea that Walt and his crew were tossing around was an adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. But when World War II would shelve many of Disney's productions, The Snow Queen would be one of those. The 1990s would see the idea picked back up, but was once again dropped when Glenn Keane opted to not be a part of the project. It wasn't until John Lasseter convinced Tarzan director Chris Buck to come back to the studio to work on what would become Frozen. The original, titled Anna and the Snow Queen, went through a lot of rewrites as Chris Buck and company had a tough time figuring out how to make the Snow Queen character work. Originally planned as the villain for the story, Elsa was far from what she would become, and wasn't even related to Anna in any way. As the sibling idea was set in stone, Elsa was still the evil queen from the story, kidnapping Anna from her wedding day and freezing her heart. The film was full of action and was much more serious in tone. It wasn't until Wreck-It Ralph writer Jennifer Lee came on board in 2012 to write the script and co-direct that things changed for the Snow Queen. Lee, inspired by a trip to Norway, as well as the scope of films like Lawrence of Arabia, would create a larger-than-life story. She would add in the plot twist to make Hans the villain, allowing for Elsa to not be the main antagonist. Along with that rewrite came the idea that Frozen would essentially drop its romantic love story, and instead become a film focused on the love and bond between two sisters. Lee would also make Olaf more of an innocent, childlike side character, and Anna would be a bit more clumsy, starting her story as a naive young girl, but ending it with a larger sense of maturity and sophistication, while making the ultimate sacrifice for her sister. The songwriting couple, Robert and Kristen Anderson Lopez, who'd previously worked on the 2011 Winnie the Pooh film, would bring a solution to the film that was much needed. While writing the song Let It Go, the couple revised Elsa from a villain to a young woman afraid of what her powers could do, and how those powers alienated her. To create the world of Frozen, Disney had to create several new software programs, including one called Matterhorn, which allowed for the real feel of snow. Not only flakes falling, but the compression of snow as it is stepped on, or a snowball breaking apart as it hits someone. Tonic was also another program developed to enrich hair and fur textures. The film would not only take after Tangled in the character design and the return to the traditional musical format, but it would also follow suit with a new name, trying to capture a wider audience. Anna and the Snow Queen would become Frozen before trailers were put out. But work was still being done on the film practically up to the release, including the song For the First Time in Forever, which had been written and recorded just 5 months before the film's premiere. Frozen would debut in November of 2013 and would become a wild success. The song Let It Go would make it onto the radio, something pretty uncommon for a Disney song. Critics would call Frozen a throwback to Disney's Renaissance and proclaim that Disney had arrived in its second Renaissance. Audiences, as well, made their way to the theaters, with Frozen taking in over $1 billion at the box office. It would win Best Animated Feature and Best Song for Let It Go at the Academy Awards as well. It was truly difficult to escape Frozen's success, as it had become a cultural phenomenon and it would stick around in pop culture conversations for a long time after its release, even while other Disney animated films were being put out, like Disney's next film, Big Hero 6. Disney acquired Marvel in 2009, and Bob Iger encouraged the animation team to look for stories that would fit into Disney animation. While in production with Winnie the Pooh, director Don Hall found the series Big Hero 6 and brought it to John Lasseter, who liked the pitch, along with Bolt director Chris Williams, who would join Hall as co-director of this new film. Written to be racially diverse with a voice cast to fit, Big Hero 6 would prove representation was a priority at Disney Animation in the 21st century. Along with the setting blending San Francisco and Tokyo, the lead character of Hiro Hamada and his brother brought an Asian flair to the film, something that only had been done once before, with Mulan. And although not stated in the film, filmmakers created a fictional city of San Francisco by saying that San Francisco was rebuilt mainly by Japanese immigrants after the 1906 earthquake, which left that city in ruin. For one of Big Hero 6's key characters, Baymax, Don Hall wanted something that looked different than any other robot we'd seen on screen, and he wanted Baymax to be approachable and lovable. On a research trip to Carnegie Mellon's University Robotics Institute in Pennsylvania, they met a team of researchers working on soft robotics, where they were using inflatable vinyl for medical robots. Hall found this really intriguing and decided to adapt the model for Baymax. Other design elements for the characters were inspired by Japanese anime, including Miyazaki films like Spirited Away and The Wind Rises. Big Hero 6 would premiere in October of 2014 at the Tokyo International Film Festival. It would have a worldwide box office of $657 million, making it another major success for Disney Animation and earning it a Best Animated Feature award from the Academy Awards. It wouldn't meet the cultural impact that Frozen had, but it would find itself popular enough to sell toys, create a pop culture figure out of Baymax, and get a spin-off television series in 2016. The overall impact of Big Hero 6 would be its steps forward in diversity, and to tell more mature stories. Big Hero 6 appeals to children as any Disney film would, but the tragedy and action built into Hero's journey is much more mature than many previous Disney films, and that maturity would follow into Zootopia. Bolt and Tangled director Byron Howard was excited by the notion of bringing back something Disney hadn't done in decades, an anthropomorphic animal film like Robin Hood. He pitched several ideas to John Lasseter that included a city built by and for animals. Lasseter asked Howard to combine some of the ideas, creating a spy movie set within that world. And over several rewrites, it turned from a spy film to a buddy cop story, highlighting Nick Wilde as the lead character. And by 2014, the film had changed once again, with the story team noting that they could get more emotions out of Judy being the main character than Nick. On a research trip to Africa, the team would get their biggest inspiration for Zootopia as they noticed that the lions would come to the watering hole and drink right next to the gazelle. They would acknowledge each other, but would peacefully get along in that space. This idea developed into a city that had a mix of people who got along based on their needs in life. Animal experts also told them that 90% of the animal population were prey to the 10% that were predators, which created a conflicting idea. Why would the majority be so afraid of the minority population? Zootopia would develop into a comedy film based in an enriched city for animals, with themes about prejudice and fear-mongering. Howard's idea of an anthropomorphic film allowed for these mature themes to come to life without feeling too adult, since it was about bunnies and foxes rather than real people. Upon its release in March 2016, it was met with top praise, being the second highest rated film of the year on Rotten Tomatoes. It was seen as smart, funny, and thought-provoking. Zootopia would make over $1 billion at the box office, narrowly missing the record that Frozen had set a few years prior. Zootopia would continue the run of Best Animated Feature Academy Award trophies that Disney just seemed to be stockpiling at this point. But Zootopia still wouldn't have the cultural impact of Frozen. To try for that impact, Disney would turn back once again to the musical princess format, with Moana. After Princess and the Frog, John Musker and Ron Clements stayed with Disney to work on another project, and looking for an original idea, Musker was drawn to Polynesian mythology, especially the character of Maui. The pair took trips to Fiji, Samoa, and other places, meeting many locals and learning about the culture of the South Pacific. The original idea for the film was to base it completely on Maui, but Clements felt that the story would be more compelling if it were about the daughter of a chief. The duo directors were also fascinated to learn that Polynesian people had just stopped sailing 3,000 years ago, after being some of the first humans to ever navigate the oceans. They would resume voyaging again 1,000 years later, but it's really unclear as to why they stopped originally. When writing the film, they opted to set it at that point in history, when Polynesia began to voyage again and develop a fictional story around the reason for the halt in sailing. The actual writing process of Moana was lengthy, and they made a lot of changes, like the other recent films. Taika Waititi actually wrote the original screenplay for the film, but when he left to go home to New Zealand and to work on his own films, not much was left from his script. There were ideas for Moana to have brothers, or for the father to be the one who wanted to resume sailing. The grandmother was introduced to encourage sailing. Another version saw Moana rescuing her father, who was lost at sea. Eventually, Aaron and Jordan Kendall, screenwriting brothers from Hawaii, came on to help navigate the script, eventually giving us the direction the story would really take in the prologue. They would also give us Tamatoa and the Kakamora. Jared Bush, who had helped on Big Hero 6 and Zootopia, would eventually write the final screenplay that would go into development. And once Big Hero 6 was completed, Don Hall and Chris Williams would help with Moana during its animation phase, as Musker and Clements' background was mainly in traditional hand-drawn animation. Musker and Clements saw the positives in computer animation, though, for Moana, especially when it came to the personality and beauty of the ocean. And taking note from Big Hero 6, Moana was cast with actors who have a South Pacific origin, including The Rock, who has a Samoan heritage, Jermaine Clement from New Zealand, and Auli'i Cravalho as the lead character of Moana, hailing from Hawaii. Another progressive push forward in Moana was to not have a love story at all. Moana would bond with Maui and create a friendship, but her mission is only to save her people and her island, not to fall in love. For the music, Disney would turn to the Tony Award-winning Lin-Manuel Miranda to create the songs that would feel contemporary, timeless, and would respect the South Pacific heritage. The film would earn $690 million at the box office after its release in November of 2016. Moana would also be critically loved, as they heralded the classic Disney formula being adapted to an emotional journey, rather than to a classic fairy tale, and for creating a contemporary story that had true character representation. And despite losing at the Academy Awards because it was beaten out by Zootopia, Moana seems to have had a larger cultural impact. Its idea of finding yourself and traveling beyond what you know resonated with audiences. For Disney Animation, during the revival, they'd really found themselves again. But the studio would have to move forward after John Lasseter would be forced to step down from his role as Chief Creative Officer at Disney, after controversy surrounded how he handled himself professionally at work. In June 2018, a new Chief Creative Officer was named. Years prior, Jennifer Lee was the first woman to ever direct a Disney animated film with Frozen, and now she found herself being the first woman to ever run Disney animation as a whole. Her impact on stories had already been felt with Frozen, seeing a more nuanced and progressive approach to the human experience, creating characters relatable to both children and adults alike. With Lee's transition into power, the revival era ends on a high note, but a new era blurs that line, and will probably be something we talk about here in the future. Thank you so much for watching this entire series of videos all about the Disney animation film eras from all the way back from the 1930s until the present. There won't be a new era past the revival, as we're not really sure what that era is and what it's going to be. However, I am going to be moving on to a new series, and that series is going to be based around Disney's live action film eras, and that's going to go all the way back to the 1940s, so do stick around for that. I'm going to be doing an entire all of the eras, and then I'll be doing each era one by one, just like we did with the animation eras. If you're new here, hit the little umbrella logo. It'll help you subscribe to the channel, or you can hit our Patreon link where I put up different content like videos and little podcasts, and I send out cool stuff for people. And of course, you can always join our Discord through the Patreon as well, where you can always chat with me about Disney animation or Disney live action films or whatever. It's a fun time. Also, if you didn't check out the whole series, you can do so right here. Just click over here on the playlist, and it'll start you from the very beginning. Also, down on the bottom here, you can check out a different video, so do that. And in the meantime, thank you for watching. Take care of each other, and keep on moving, people.